We are back. We are rocking. We're going to make this happen. Small Business Safari. Get in here. Let's lock in and listen quickly, everybody, because if you really want to get a law passed in the world, Alan and I just heard from our guest who's about to come on that the law has to be something we both agree on when, one, we are
sober,
and two, we are, Rob,
drunk.
Attaboy. And
Yes.
since Alan and I have both been both, we know that
Come
one.
on,
So
now.
again,
You're hurting our reputation.
To get a law passed, everybody, if you can think it up sober, you can think it up drunk. It's a law. I think we're onto something. Rob Macklin, thank you for joining. Everybody, we're about to have some fun. And I'll tell you why.
Why, Chris?
I'm glad you asked me. Because the audience is all dying to know. Why? And I'm like, yeah.
I think people just pulled over just to wait.
You know,
see what you're about to say.
You're at a red light right now, and it turned green, and you're like, wait, what's he going to talk about? Guys, I'm going to talk about what everybody here wants. You want to start a business, you want to grow a business, but you know what you want to do?
Make a ton of money when you get out of the business.
And get out of that fucking business and make a ton of money. Did I just say that? Yeah, you can put that down. That's why you stayed. That's why everybody's beeping at you from behind. Please just don't have that I'm a student driver sticker on there.
Oh, my God. People are putting 2 of them on there now. And they're old.
2. You drive by these people, they said, I'm a student driver. And you drive by them, you're like 45 years old. You're like, dude, if you're a student driver, you need to stop. Just get off the car. You're out of here. So, Rob, thank you for the for indulging us for a minute. So, Rob Macklin, welcome to the show. Today, you're with One in Fun. But before this, what did you do?
I have been all over the place. I'm a lawyer by trade, and I started out doing mergers and acquisitions for a very large law firm. So some of the biggest M&A deals in the world, a firm called Skadden Arps. So, we were doing, when 2 major airlines would merge, we would handle things like that. So big deals. And then I went in-house and was general counsel of a bunch of different companies. Publicly traded companies, but probably more importantly for a lot of your listeners, a lot of private equity companies. So I was on the management teams for private equity companies, and various public companies are buying up a lot of these small businesses all over the place. So we would sit there and do these deals and take a look at these and evaluate small companies. And gosh, one of the companies in particular, I was the deputy general counsel of a public company. We probably saw 200 deals a year come across our desk that we would evaluate to one extent or another. And would do a few dozen of those on a regular basis.
So it all sounds sexy, and we'll come back to Rob's history, but let's get into this because it all sounds sexy. We all want to leave the business. We think it's going to be really easy, but you just said 200 deals a year came across just your company's desk.
Right. Yeah.
What makes it so hard to sell a company?
Not being prepared to do so, not having the right structure, the organization, not listening to the right advisors. It's an art form to sell a business. And so anybody who wants to sell a business, I'm going to say 2 things. One is, look, I'm a lawyer. I sell businesses for a living. But I'm also going to say, I'm your first hire, but I'm probably not your most important hire. Your most important hire is a good investment banker that knows what they're doing in the space that you're in. Now, you hire me first because you need somebody to negotiate the deal with the investment banker to make sure that you're actually paying them a reasonable fee. But getting that banker in that can actually get you in front of a couple hundred companies is appropriate. So, I mean, right now we're selling a company, and I obviously can't go into details, but my firm has probably looked at 60 non-disclosure agreements, right? So that the investment bank has sent out enough, teasers to various folks that, that's generated 50 or 60 non-disclosure agreements of people that are interested in taking a look at that. That is not uncommon. That's fairly usual. So getting a banker who is well connected, who can actually get you in front of the most people possible is absolutely critical. That's the first step.
Brilliant.
That was it. I thought Alan was about to have this amazing, hard hitting, knock your socks off question. He goes,
tough question.
That's good.
No, you know what the problem is, Rob, is you don't know this, but over the 2 years, we kind of keep score on who asks good questions. And Chris asked a good question, and it really hurts me to say that.
That was a good one. I got a follow on this one even better.
No, really.
Let's back up. You said structure. So for a lot of our business owners and a lot of people listening to the podcast, either thinking about starting a business or I'm in one, scaling it up. Maybe I got 5 to 10 employees. Maybe I've got 10 to 20 employees. When you say structure, talk to a little bit more about that. What are you looking for?
There's kind of, I break that down into 3 components. The first would be making sure that the structure of the business actually reflects, your family's interests, right? You start a business and you got a couple kids. I don't know, they're 8 and 9, 9 and 10, something like that, right? And if you're starting this business as a legacy for them, the best time to handle your estate planning is right now, right? Because at this point in time, you've got, like, the business isn't worth anything. And it's really easy to give your kids shares of a business that isn't worth anything, right? If you come back to me 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 years later, you're like, the business is worth $30 million. I'm gonna go, we got some gift tax issues to deal with if you want to get this money in the hands of your kids. So starting that first, like, that's number one. Number 2 is getting the company structured from a financial perspective that is easy for a buyer to understand. So you got to think about, if you're going to exit to a large company or private equity, there's like a set of expectations that they have around what a business is supposed to look like. And that set of expectations is basically like all of us. It's like, how do we do it? Right? We're private equity. We do things a certain way. We have GAAP accounting, right? We have accrual-based accounting. We don't have cash-based accounting. Like, if you're paying taxes to the IRS, cash-based accounting is fantastic. If you want to sell a company, you got to have accrual-based accounting. And so if you're in an industry, like I do a ton of stuff in home improvement right now, right? So you get guys that will be on cash-based accounting and they'll say, well, my revenue is up 50% this year. Well, not really. What happened was you just booked a lot of orders and took a lot of deposits. Like, your revenue's not up. You have a lot of cash in the bank.
Did that hurt,
Cash
Chris?
in the bank is fantastic, but your revenue's not.
All right, Rob, that is hitting a little close to home.
Yeah.
All right. No, I'm accrual-based accounting, but I know what you mean. Hey, big boy, I'm up. Have you seen it? Well, don't worry about that.
It's coming. Checks in the mail.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a big one. Look, honestly, the other one is, I've seen companies that are like, man, I'm doing $10 million and I have a 38% profit margin. And you're like, well, how in the hell are you doing that? And well, it's because, the person who owns it, I'm like the head marketing person, and I'm the head install guy, and I'm the CFO, and I've got all these positions in my business that aren't being filled that I'm doing because I'm working 90 hours a week. Well, a buyer's going to look at that and go, I need to backfill all these positions, and all of a sudden your profit margin drops, precipitously, because they can't expect you to run 90-hour weeks for the rest of your life and make a lot of money. So that's the big one. And then when you do go backfill those positions, I'm going to tell you that the single biggest reason why, in my experience on the buy side, we walk away from deals, it's not having people that are credible to back you up. Like, you got to have the answer to, if Bob gets hit by a bus, what happens to the company? And if the answer is, we don't know, not really sure. Bob has everything. It's all in Bob's head. It's at Bob's desk. It's on Bob's computer, and Bob's not there. The buyer hasn't bought a business. They've bought a gigantic liability.
So the fact that Chris is never at work and always on vacation is actually really good for selling his company.
Yes, honestly, yes. If you're
good job, Chris,
and you don't have to do anything, that's the best scenario. Like,
you mean like going to the Green Bay Lions game
next
Thursday, and then
so Rob is encouraging you to do even less.
Even less. You should work less.
And by the way, I have to point out to
I need more advisors like Rob and less advisors like you.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you a piece of advice here, because you're patting yourself on the back that was the second good question, and I gave a thumbs down because Rob made it a decent question because of an excellent answer. But the funny thing was, I put my thumb down, and then Chris muted us to flip me off. And I'm like, why did you mute us to just give me the finger?
Because I was going to say you two at the same time.
Yeah. We're sitting here on Zoom. You're on mute. I'm watching you guys flip each other off. I'm like, am I supposed to laugh at this? I'm not really sure if I'm on video for people.
No, yeah, I put you on mute because I was going to tell.
I was like, he just muted me to give me the finger.
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, welcome to podcast land. You know what? We may be in the top 10%, but we're just not that good at it. All right, back to Rob talking about structuring it, but back to the point. I think ownership structure, financial understanding, make it easy for the company to understand. If you are doing everything, this is a big one. because I'm actually looking at potentially purchasing a smaller business. And he is coming to me telling me just how great everything is. And I'm like, yep. Who does the sales? I do. Who does the scheduling? I do.
Mm-hmm.
Who does the estimating? That's still me. Okay. Who does the collecting? Well, I have a lady in the office, but I usually do most of it and she does it. I'm like, okay, what does this lady do in the office? And he's like, oh yeah, but dude, I mean, that revenue's there and I am netting big time money. I'm like, yeah, I'm netting little time money, but guess what? I've got people doing this. I got a sales team. So it's important, you don't make as much, you think, right? I mean, as a small business owner, if you're thinking of exiting, it's going to cost you a little bit on the upfront, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it sounds like the guy you're looking at, he doesn't have a business, he has a job. Right?
Yeah.
And also, I'm a lawyer. My wife and I have a law firm. The day that the two of us leave our own 2-person law firm, there's no value there. Like, the value goes away. The value is all in her and I, right? People that know us, we do the work ourselves. We have that job. I have a separate company on the financing side, but like that law firm, there's no value to that firm because it's entirely us. And if you want to make a lot of money for yourself, like, the way that you do that is to do all that work, but you're costing yourself a long-term value, because ultimately the long-term, what a buyer wants is the ability to basically say, you're going to go on vacation, I'm never going to see you again, and this business will continue to run along. And the only way you do that is you structure it, you have people, you have processes, your accounting is set up correctly, and all.
So Rob, you were saying, you got to be able to build that business and do what you're doing. So again, how do you do that and look at, because you're not making as much, right? So how do you reconcile that one?
You got to know what you're in it for, honestly. Are you in it for immediate cash flow? Or are you in it to actually build a business long term? And there's no right answer there, right? It's totally fine to say I'm this for immediate cash flow. That's not a problem at all. And just recognize that's what you're doing, and be okay with that. And that's totally fine. But if you want to build a business long term, what it means is you got to go hire somebody. You might have to give them a little bit of equity. You might have to pay more than you're comfortable paying. You might take less in your own paycheck because you're hiring this great person. Now, look, ideally what happens is you bring in those folks, you put in the processes, and long term, right? Maybe you take a dip in profitability now, but your revenues go up, and you're not making 36% of $5 million, but you're making 20% of $30 million, and that's way better. And you can sell that in a long term, but you're going to take a hit for sure. And you have to be willing to commit to that, commit to the process, give up control, and get the right people in that will actually run that business for you.
So in your typical small business scenario, somebody's thinking about exiting. Really, what's the timeline of I'm thinking about exiting before they really have set themselves up to be able to exit as well as they can? And at what point do they bring in counsel? And at what point do they bring in a banker?
So I'm going to say bring in counsel sooner rather than later. And the reason I say that is the biggest hurdle in selling a small business is actually making the decision to sell the small business. And so going and talking to a lawyer in particular is kind of a concrete first step where you're saying, yep, I've signed the engagement letter. I'm committed to it. Like, I'm actually going to do this. I'm actually going to go forward with this thing. And then at that point in time, when you've gotten over that hurdle, you're maybe, I think if you're going to do this right, my suggestion is you go talk to that lawyer, and the lawyer finds you an investment banker, and then the investment banker and the lawyer together will help you do. My recommendation in almost all cases is what's called a quality of earnings report, where you're going to get some independent accountants that are going to come in and look at your financial statements and say to you, a buyer will evaluate your financial statements in the following way. A buyer will say your revenue that you think is $10 million is really $9.5 million because you're doing this thing wrong. Or, yeah, your profitability is overstated because you're only paying yourself $50,000 a year. And in reality, someone in your position should be making $250,000 a year. And so that extra 200 grand is showing up as profit, which you're pocketing, which is fantastic. But a buyer is going to have to replace you with somebody with more expensive asset. Those sorts of things, they're going to look at those and evaluate your financials from an independent perspective. That's absolutely critical. Now, if that QOV comes back and you're like, there's not much to change, man, go forward, and you could probably be sold, depending on the industry, in 6 months. Particularly if the industry is hot for private equity, 6 months is quite doable. If it's not, if you have some things to clean up, if you come in and say, well, man, we really need to do some estate planning and there's some tax collections we have to make. And, we just converted to an S Corp and want to convert back to a partnership, something like that, right? It may take a little bit longer, but, realistically, timeline, you're ready to go. You can get it done in 6 to 9 months pretty easily.
There's a lot of work to get to that 6 to 9 months, is knowing you've been through a lot of these. And my data points are, 4 or 5 guys that I know have done this, and it's tough. I mean, to get through it, like you said, number one, you have to commit to doing it. And that's tough. It sounds easy. And I tell you, there are days when it sounds really easy for me, buddy, in the handyman remodeling business. And you're like, get me the hell out of here. So as you're looking at this and doing this, for a lot of people, is there a number revenue wise that you need to be at before you start talking to a lawyer and an investment banker? Is it $1 million company? Is it a 5 million? Is it 10? What is it?
Yeah. So if you want to sell to private equity, you're probably going to need somewhere between $1 million and $3 million of EBITDA. So earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, before they're going to pay attention to you. There's a caveat there. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think that's the big one. See, nobody's willing to ever put a number on it. And you finally did. See, when you talk with people, nobody will ever put a number on it. They're like, it depends. If you have the great idea, but they're all talking about that, the Facebook, they're talking about these one-offs and not the other 99.9% of us.
Well, he said there was a caveat.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, you jumped in.
Can I get off my soapbox? All right, I'm off my soapbox. All right, I'll let Rob, more intelligent one, talk to me. Okay.
I mean, look, to the Facebook point, yeah, are there companies in Silicon Valley that have no revenue and are worth $1 billion? Absolutely. They're called unicorns. They call them unicorns for a reason, because there aren't that many of them. There's a handful, right? Look, you can sell a company in that $1 million to $3 million range as kind of an independent company to private equity. If you're smaller than that, you're going to have to sell to an existing strategic company as a we'll call it a tuck-in, right? There's a basement remodeling company that covers all of Illinois except for East St. Louis, and you're a basement remodeling company in East St. Louis, right? Man, you plug in perfectly. It fits exactly right. That's exactly where you want to be. And those companies can be quite small, but quite honestly, you're not going to get a pretty big multiple of revenue, and you're going to be relatively small. And I wouldn't say call an investment banker. You're going to be calling a business broker, which is a kind of like an investment banker, but deals with much smaller businesses and not as sophisticated. I mean, I don't mean to slam business brokers, but they don't operate at the same level.
No, Rob, I mean, you're hitting on it. And that's why when you're talking to our audience and everybody's listening to this, a lot of people, this is the first time you're listening to this stuff, and you think, oh, I'm going to go sell my business. And, I've heard this thing's called private equity and venture capital, and it sounds so sexy. And and you find out your business, you're pulling in $2 million in revenue, and you're doing like $250 a year yourself. You're like, yeah, I'm going to do that. No, man, slow down. Listen to what Rob's saying. At a certain size, this makes sense. However, a lot of the same steps can happen. You have to do a lot of those same things if you want to get. And he just hit on that great thing, and that's called the multiple. Rob, you want to explain the multiple for most of us?
Yeah. So the multiple is a multiple of earnings, or multiple of cash flow, or multiple of EBITDA, typically meaning it's, if you're making $1 million a year in profit and you're going to get a 5 times multiple, you're going to get paid $5 million for your business, roughly speaking. There's some add backs and things like that, but think about it in that way. That multiple is really just a rule of thumb around the value of your business, because at the end of the day, what a buyer's looking at is, hey, I'm going to pay you $5 million for your business today. How much money am I going to make in the future? How fast am I going to get that money back? So the multiple is kind of an easy way to compare companies. It's not the be all end all. You'll hear some bankers call it, that's the country club price, right? So you can talk to your friends at the golf course. I got 6, I got 6.5. I did better than you. But at the end of the day, right, it's just a rule of thumb, because kind of, if you think about it, an investment is just, I give you money today and I get money back in the future. And like, how fast I get my money back in the future and what the riskiness of getting my money back in the future is really what it is. And that the multiple is a way to do that. But what I will say is a rule of thumb, the bigger your business is, the bigger the multiple you're going to get, because the cost of getting a deal done, right? private equity firm is going to come in, and I'm not, some people are going to think I'm exaggerating. Private equity is going to come in and buy a $10 million, spend $10 million in a company. They may spend $500,000 in professional fees to get that deal done, right? So they're spending 5% of the deal cost to get that deal done. It's going to cost them exactly the same amount of money to get a $20 million deal done. So they're going to pay you less and less and less. So if you're going to come in with a $5 million deal, 5 times multiple on $1 million company, and they're going to spend $500,000 to get your deal done, like they're not going to pay you as much. Number one. Number two, the bigger the company is, the easier it is to scale. And a bigger company can be what's called a platform for a private equity company. So if you think about it from the perspective of, hey, new private equity companies just raised a fund of $500 million that they need to spend, like it's a lot easier to find a $100 million deal than it is to find $25 million deals. They just got to do less work. So they're going to pay more for those bigger deals. They're going to pay more for those bigger deals because it's less work. And also because they can then go start having that $100 million company go and buy a bunch of $5 million companies and kind of build up a business that way inorganically. So the multiple, again, it's a rule of thumb, but the most common mistake that people use is assuming that the multiple is the same for every business in a given industry. And in reality, it's just not. I mean, size really does matter.
And that's what I keep telling you, Chris.
I just literally just wrote this down. I got to find a great title for it. And I think the answer is size does matter if you want to sell your goods.
Yep. There you go. That's exactly right.
So again, you hit a lot of that. And that's where people come and talk to me, smaller than me a little bit, getting going, they're scaling business. And, I'm getting people reaching out on the podcast, talking to me a little bit. And we may be doing $1 million a year. Maybe we're doing 500,000 a year. But, even if you're doing $1 million, you're thinking, yeah, I'm putting 500 in my pocket. Of course, the first number is no, you're not. I mean, if you think you are, you're really not in the home services business, especially too much to serve. And so when you talk about multiple, they think, you know what, I got it. And so I'm going to go do this. And you're like, well, do you have, and Rob already brought this up, do you have a job or do you have a business?
Right.
Yep.
And then a job, he just brought up numbers, guys. And I'm going to tell you right now, your job is not 5 or 6 multiple. It is 3 at best, and most likely 2 to 2.5. You got to hear that, because nobody's willing. I finally had somebody cough it up and say that to me. Until you build your business, Chris, nobody's going to pay you more than 3. And I was like, bullshit. I'm smarter than everybody else. So I'm going to figure this thing out. And you know what? He's right. And you know what? That's what you got to think about. So everybody thinks your business is worth way more than it is. And Rob's laying out the skinny. I don't care if you're a $10 to $50 million business. If you're a 1 to 5, it's the same stories, man. You guys think your business is worth way more than it is. And you have not really built the structure that you want to get there. And you got to start doing it. And you got to start doing it now if you want to exit the next 3 to 4 or the next 2 to 3, right?
Yeah. I mean, put yourself on the buyer side. Like if you just got an inheritance of $1 million, right? Your third uncle died and you ended up with $1 million, and there's some dude down the street who's got this, basement waterproofing company. And he's like, yeah, I'm working at it full time and I'm making $500,000 a year. Why don't you buy this business from me? Are you going to go, yeah, here's $1 million and I'm going to spend 2 years working my butt off to make that $500,000. Now I'm just even at that point in time, right? I've literally made nothing else, and now I'm even, and I got to work like another 2 years to be averaging $250,000 a year. Or I could go down the job and go down the street, get the job as a sale. I'm great at sales. I could be the sales manager for some other company and make $400,000 a year right away. Like, why would I pay you for that business? It makes no sense. The only way you're going to make money for a business is if somebody can actually go hire someone else to take over your job. And as soon as that happens, that profitability that you think you have just gets stripped away by hiring somebody else to take your place.
Man, speaking the truth, Rob, thank you so much for coming on doing this. This is, if you're not getting value out of this one, man, you're blowing it, because this has been stuff that's been eye-opening for me. I've been at it for 15 and a half years, and I was very naive at year 5. And I would say at 15 and a half years, I'm still naive, but I'm learning, and I've learned with everybody, as we do this, is that our business is our business, but growing it and figuring out what you want to do. If you want an exit strategy, you got to figure that out. So Rob, as you have worked with other businesses, you've also invested in some. So let's talk for a minute. Let's switch gears a little bit. Which business did you invest in, and why did you do that?
Well, I've got a few kind of passive investments that I've made. But the one that I'm currently in is called One and Fund. So One and Fund is a finance company for the home improvement space. So think of us as a multi-lender finance company. We've got a web platform that we've developed. We were just a few different shows. The web platform allows home improvement companies to come in to the platform, put in a single application, and then depending on the criteria of that consumer's application, their credit score, DTI, all that fun stuff, right? We go to multiple lenders and we find the best lender that's most likely to approve it. And that's really the crux of it. So we started that in February of this year, myself and a couple partners that, honestly, one of the guys whose companies I sold kind of put me together with his former finance manager. And we kind of took this off and started it up. And we think it's a really great, solution for the space because, at the end of the day, the easiest way to increase your revenue is increase your closing percentage. And for most home improvement companies, if you're not using financing, you're missing out on sales. And you may not even know that you're missing out on sales, because if somebody doesn't have the money to pay for your project, they're not going to tell you they don't have the money to pay for the project. They're just going to go, no, maybe not for me, some other time, call me back later. But if you can offer financing, that's a big deal. And what I'll tell you is, having sold now double-digit companies in the home improvement space, all of the biggest companies that I had are financing 50+% of their deals.
50 plus.
50+.
How quick is the approval process?
Faster than I can say. I mean, it's just a few seconds, right? We've got APIs into a bunch of lenders. So those are basically happening instantaneously.
You didn't realize he was trained as a Navy SEAL in the Navy SEAL Team 8 when you ask that question right there, right? Which is but that's how fast. Actually,
Yeah.
and the reason I brought that up is I recently, just literally 2 days ago, just signed up with One and Fund.
I didn't even know that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so there you go. Not only what's that? Of course, Hair Club for Men. Definitely didn't get into that program, but I did join a One and Fund, and that's how I found out on the backside that you were part of the deal. So tell me, you brought that up, 50%. You sold your businesses, 50% are financing out there. So you clearly looked at that deal and went, you know what, I'm going to put my my money from my dead uncle in that one to use it with your line.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
You missed that one, but don't worry about it.
Okay.
You'll catch up in a minute.
Thank you.
So you like that one, you like that model. What's going on? What else do you like in the space? What else have you said, hey man, I think these guys are really on something, let's go do that?
So actually, strangely enough, I've got a real good buddy who's a real estate agent, and we're looking at garage floor coating. So for the sole reason that it's an interesting model, but from my perspective, I would love to do my garage, but the prospect of cleaning out everything in my garage is entirely it's not worth it. I would pay somebody money to do that, but no one will do that. But hey, if we're in real estate, when's the best time to do it? Right when you're moving in and out of the house. So we're trying to come up with some linkage of doing it in connection with real estate, because hey, when the place is empty, that seems like a really good time to actually put down a garage floor coating. So that's one thing that I may be doing with him coming up soon.
I love that. And I'll tell you, for those who have been listening to the podcast, and probably you've missed some of these episodes, we've had College Hunks Moving Junk and Simply Organized here in Atlanta, Heather Rogers. We've had them on there, and they would clean it out for you. And then we've also had Granite Garage Floors, Al Mishkov, who has franchised his idea and has actually sold it since. He's one of the ones I referenced in the 5 that I know, and how he sold his business. That was his exit strategy. I think he did it well. I mean, he didn't tell me all the numbers, but although he does bitch a lot, he has left his business in the last year. I've never heard him, he bitches all the time, but he bitches so much about making all this money.
Don't take it personally, Al.
Oh, Al's not listening to this because he's done and more done. He's on the retirement path.
Well, he got better to do. He can listen to our podcast.
He should. And invite me back out to his golf course, bastard. Al, get me out there. I got golf course material now. 5.5, 6. Hey, I could be golf course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, you're missing some of the best golf in the world in Wisconsin right now. I mean, from where I live in the middle of Wisconsin, we have
Whistling's
six of the top 100 courses in the U.S. I can get to.
Yeah, right. That's why I've heard the same thing. We're going to get up there. Though I am not a links golfer. Are you a links golfer?
I love links golf.
Oh,
I hit a ball too high, way too high, and way too far right and way too far left. And right now we're in scramble season here in Atlanta because the fall has hit, and I've been invited to like 4 scrambles over 4 weeks, and I was like, yeah, and I'm sponsoring one of them. We're doing the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta sponsorship coming up, which is thrilling, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to play. I got to figure out if I can pull that off.
I might be able to help you flight your ball if you'd actually ever invite me to play golf with you in this country club.
So I'm so glad you just brought that up,
Yeah,
Alan, because you're about to get invited because we're going to the Braves game right after this.
So, Rob, we've been doing this for 2 years. I've known Chris for 12 years, and he lives in a gated golf course community. Have I ever played golf with Chris? No. Do I have my own pass to get in? No. Actually, the security guard at the gate knows me. She's like, "Why won't he give you a pass? I got to give her my license every single time." A lot is coming out right now, but
sounds like you guys have a complicated relationship.
well, we
do. You know
have
what?
to go therapy.
We're
actually,
yeah. In fact, our next guest is a couples therapist.
Now, I should have told you that I am actually a Dodgers fan, so I'm a little. Yeah,
been a great
it's
team.
like the first year the Dodgers haven't had the best record in the NL, and I'm a little bit upset about that.
Well, then they can be the underdog.
Yeah. Well, no, they should lose. But
as long as we can agree that we hate the Astros and they cheated in the World Series from
we're on board.
All right,
with that.
now we're back. Everybody, we're back on the same team.
Speaking of the same team, we need to talk about the SEAL team.
All right, so we've hit a lot of stuff, and I did reference this, but Rob, you got your start. I shouldn't say start. Tell us how you ended up on SEAL Team 8 and what you did and all that.
Yeah. So I came out of high school in the mid '90s, right when the military was drawing down, and I had a couple friends from high school that had gone to flight school. Or a couple of friends from college, excuse me, that had graduated, gone to flight school at Pensacola, Florida, and the Navy had allowed them to fly approximately 15 hours in 9 months, and because there was no money. If you're like, it's kind of strange to think about, but like,
I remember that
late '90s, there was no money for the military. Everything was getting drawn down, so I kind of scrubbed my military plans. But after 9/11, I kind of got back into it, and I'd been a lawyer at that point. I'd gone to law school, come out, and discovered that the Navy had this really interesting program, what they call Direct Commission Officer program. So if you're in certain specialties, they will allow you to sort of skip OCS, Officer Candidate School, and just immediately become an officer. So there's this. It's typically for like doctors or If you ever watch the TV show MASH, I'm sure that's what Hawkeye and BJ were DCO officers, right? They just you just need to put on a uniform and then just go do your surgery thing, right? So the Navy had such a need for intel folks at the time because we went from counting battleships or counting aircraft carriers to finding human beings in the middle of a desert, quite literally, that they started collecting all these intel guys. And so they had this intel program, DCO program. I went and did that, and literally I went to Lamont, Illinois, I believe it was, in the recruiter's office. And once my paperwork came through, I go down to the basement. There's one guy swearing me in. It's like, "Congratulations, you're now an officer in the United States Navy." And I'm like, "What do I do now?" And he's like, "Well, here's the temporary ID. Go up to Great Lakes Naval Base and tell them you need to buy a bunch of uniforms." All right. So that's what I did. So I went up and bought a bunch of uniforms. I went through some sort of basic intel training. I got to go to Pensacola, Florida for 2 weeks as opposed to 12, and run around, and the Marine Corps drill instructors, squirt water, and you do push-ups in the mud. And
how old were you at the time?
I was 31. I was 31 at the time. Yeah.
We don't say this often, but man, thank you for your service. You had a pull. You had a pull after 9/11. You could have stayed as a lawyer. You could have been out there just freaking tonning it, bringing home the big bucks, bringing home all the bad bunnies. I mean, did I say that out loud?
You did.
Damn it.
That was a little weird. Yeah.
All right. So
thank you for your tribute to the military.
Yeah. Thank you. But so you go back, you decided to go back go into the military after not being in it. So, wow. Thank you. Well done. Let's go back into what you did.
Yeah.
So I did some basic work, and if I want to do something, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do something cool. So I found there was a unit at the Office of Naval Intelligence, which was responsible for basically staffing or backfilling intel slots for the Navy SEALs. It was actually run by a fellow named Captain Pete Weichel, who at the time was the bullfrog, meaning the senior most SEAL in the Navy. He had been enlisted and stood this program up. Pete Weichel is kind of an extraordinary guy, and still is probably in his mid 60s and runs ultra marathons and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So he stood this program up, and we we sort of would stand up units of about 10 or 12 guys. We would then deploy and do a bunch of training. So I did that, got to do a bunch of really cool training. Went to interrogation school for the Defense Intelligence Agency ran, went to Blackwater, the actual facility. So they did some contracting, but they started out really as just a school for people to go learn how to shoot and drive cars and in very inappropriate ways and blow things up in a very, I don't want to say totally controlled environment, but a fun environment. So we did that. And, I discovered that the second most fun thing in life is shooting machine guns. And it's the only thing more fun than shooting machine guns is shooting machine guns when the U.S. Army or the U.S. government is paying for ammunition, because it's really, really easy to spend a lot of money really, really fast if you got to buy your own ammo.
That's right.
But it's so we did all kinds of fun stuff like that, and I got attached to SEAL Team 8 and we deployed to Iraq. So I was there for basically my summer vacation of 2008 was in Iraq, and we worked a particular target set, which I can't specifically specify, but it was
it's cool.
Yeah, basically, my job was to, find people.
Okay.
Find the bad guys so that the SEALs could grab them. And we did everything from, interrogations on the back end to I had a unit of about 25 people. We would send people on target to, interrogate folks on target, what's called tactical site exploitation, which basically is military slang for toss the room. Like you grab all the fun stuff, pull all of it out, bring it back, analyze it, take all the data off computers, phones, those sorts of things. And find the bad guys.
So did you bring some of those skills of interrogation and tossing the room back to your practice in mergers?
Absolutely. What's interesting about what's actually fascinating is there's actually a fair bit of overlap between interrogations and negotiations. An interrogation at some point is really a negotiation. You're trying to convince somebody to tell you, what they don't want to tell you. And you've got to come up with a reason why they're going to tell you those things. Now, sometimes it's kind of easy because they've just been pulled out of bed at 3 a.m. and somebody's had an N4 pointed in their face and they're a little, what's called shock, right? They don't really know what's going on, but once they've had a chance to kind of collect themselves and actually pull it together, they'll have defenses. It's like, oh, this is the reason why I did this or I did that. And you're confronting them with evidence as you go along. And you're trying to break down those defenses. It's always a little bit harder because they speak Arabic and you don't. So you're trying to do this through a translator, which makes it sometimes a lot more interesting. Although the ones that were really hardcore actually spoke English, and those were always the ones you'd have to be particularly careful about. It's not the guy that you knew spoke English, but the guy that you didn't know spoke English that you got kind of difficult with. But yeah, so it's a lot of applicable skills because it really is. It is no negotiation. It's learning information and coming up with an argument as to why the other guy should do what you're telling him to do.
You're in awe, aren't you?
Yeah, he's a badass.
Shock and awe.
Yeah,
I know
right.
he is a badass. That's awesome. How many years were you in?
8 years total in the reserves, and that my active deployment was for a year. So when I wasn't actively deployed, I did intel work that ranged from doing analysis of other folks' interrogation work to writing grandiose strategic papers on, military functionality of Eastern European countries and things like that. And you're like, oh, it's, one of them was sort of directly comparable to being a lawyer, is read a bunch of stuff and write a paper about it, which isn't as exciting as it sounds. But
so you're a Dodgers fan. Where did you go to law school?
University of Chicago.
All right. But you were from the West Coast originally?
Grew up in LA, went to UCLA and got into University of Chicago Law School, which is one of the top kind of few in the country. And
we know that.
Yeah. Went off there and met my wife at law school. We were in the same class, and she's from Joliet and a Cubs fan. And yeah, we're off to the races.
So do you have to go through serious negotiations on who does dishes and things like
Bingo.
that? Or,
yeah. We make the kids do it, so it's actually we're very much aligned on that.
Well, I love alignment. All right.
Yeah.
So back to interrogation techniques. How old are your kids?
They are 15 and 16.
Perfect. So is waterboarding part of your tactics? Because maybe I missed that with my 23.
Only for the kids. Just because they deserve it.
And on that note,
yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, it is fun though, having both kids be the kids of lawyers is kind of a pain in the ass sometimes. Like
I gotta imagine, man.
They throw it right back in your face, don't they?
Yeah. Well, the problem is not when they make a bad argument; it's when they make a good argument.
Mm-hmm.
I have to come up with a reason as to why it's still a bad argument. It's
And
as they get older and smarter, it's harder and harder.
All right. How many times you can put your hands? How many times you go? Because I'm your dad. Because that's my usually my end.
Many. Or now it's because I have control over your bank account.
So right.
Yeah. Well,
I can just, you know, the money you thought you had in your checking account, I can go on my phone and it's no longer there.
Yeah. Well, actually, you know, back in I guess I did do that one because that phone can get turned off right now. that did end that one. Yeah, my son was on the debate team. That made it tough. And he wants to be a lawyer, which makes it even tougher.
I'm going to talk him out of that one.
Yeah, you know, I'm trying. I've been trying since he's in middle school. The kid's senior University of Georgia, studying for the LSATs, just hit his target score, by the way.
Nice.
He just texted me yesterday. Very excited about that, getting ready to do that. Yeah, he's got big plans, but yeah, I might actually have him talk with you. I don't know.
Yeah, there were definitely two kinds of kids at students at law school. There was maybe a third of the class who knew they always wanted to be lawyers. They knew case law going in, and I got to law school, I couldn't even name probably but 3 Supreme Court justices. So I was in the other class of I somehow ended up in law school because I wasn't sure what else to do.
Well, no, it's pretty good, man. UCLA, University of Chicago. And so I do know University of Chicago is a very, very good school. And that's depending on his LSAT scores where he's going to set his targets. People keep asking, where's he want to go? And he won't tell anybody until he gets his number.
Hopefully he does. We used to wear shirts, University of Chicago Law School, and it said "Hell does freeze over." Slogan.
Yeah. That's awesome. Rob, this has been amazing for anybody. Again, just thinking about business, people don't give you the straight scoop. You know, you talk to people, you go out, we do a lot of networking, and everybody does the it depends. And as an entrepreneur, which Rob clearly has a lot of that in him, and then also took time to take out time and do service for our country. We hear one, we don't hear 3, right? We hear 5, 6, 5, 6 multiple. You know what? I heard of another guy who's got 17 multiple in his business. Oh yeah, that's me. That's me all day long. And they're like, yeah. And then everybody takes that multiple and says, well, how much you making? Oh, dude, I'm clearing like 500. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. I'm like, son, you only have $1.5 million in revenue.
Right.
I mean, are you seriously talking to me right now? You know, I might know a little bit about business. I mean, stop lying. And so finally somebody can tell you the scoop. And that's the way it's got to go down, because nobody will talk numbers with you because they're afraid to give you this. And you're still hearing it. And if you heard the wrong numbers, you better go back and re-listen to this sucker, because Rob's giving it to you.
Well, it goes down to who are you asking for their opinion. And sometimes people don't know, but they want to act like they know. And so then they give you that vague answer. But you talk to somebody like Rob who knows, and you're going to get an answer.
Yeah, this has been solid. Rob, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge. So, Rob, you're a passive investor in One Fund, but how can we find you out there in the wild world of maybe I want to be selling my business?
Yeah, so you can give me at Macklin Law LLC, or you could go to One Fund as well. So One Fund, I'm still actively involved in. Macklin Law, myself and my wife. Honestly, we thought about building a website, but we have so many clients that we haven't gotten around to yet. But so it's but if you give me One Fund, we can I can help you out there. So
all right, home services
go to the
people,
One Fund website and
don't listen to Macklin when it comes to network to marketing, right? We're gonna go get law advice from him. But when it comes to marketing, you got to have your freaking website up, son. I mean, but
yes, it's bad. I fully acknowledge this is the shoemaker's kids. Don't do what I do at all.
No, this is awesome, dude. This has been awesome. All right. Well, we got to go with our final 4 questions before we rock and roll. Are you ready to go?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do this. Number 1, Rob, what is a great book you would recommend for our audience?
Probably everyone's expecting some big significant thing, but I'm going to go Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is my favorite book of all time.
Whoa.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That's a great pull. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah. So I love the use of language Douglas Adams has. And honestly, I think, everyone wants to come up with some really significant book. And now if I'm going to read, I read enough heavy stuff all the time. If I'm going to read, I'm going to read something that's fun.
That's a great point. Yep. You know what? And you got to do that because you pick up stuff all the time. Just got to have some fun. All right. Second question. What is the favorite feature of your home?
We redid our basement about a year ago, and we put in a wine wall. So on the back end, basically.
Why aren't you sitting in front of that? Rob's just
I'm at the office now.
He looks like it's a mugshot, by the way.
If you bring me kid, I'll come back to do.
He does. All right. Then, dude, we got to go there. All right, favorite wine.
Ooh. There is a winery called Tenuta Torciano out of Tuscany that they make a Barolo that is, I think, spectacular. Now, part of that is because I've been to that winery in Tuscany, and it's kind of hard to like not love a place that you've been. So
right.
I agree. When you go, it makes it so much better. Yeah. I've been in Napa Valley now. I'm on 16 trips. So every time
I go to Napa, we come back with like 4 more wine clubs and 6 cases of wine, and all of a sudden you're like, I can't. I'm
stuck. Drink that much.
And your average bottle that you drink, the daily average has just gone up, right? I used to start with $2 Chuck, and now I'm at like $42 Chuck.
Yeah. During COVID, my wife and I my daughter and I went to Costco, and I came back with like 2 cases of wine, and my daughter Kate goes, my wife had this, is like, Daddy bought $400 worth of wine, but he bought 2 cases. Is like, yes, that's fantastic, because we're no longer drinking like $50 and $60 and $70 a bottle of wine every night. Like,
nice
$12 bottles of wine that actually work too.
Wine wall, love that. Okay, let's go. So we are really into customer service because we're kind of customer service
freaks.
So what is a customer service pet peeve of yours when you're out there and you're the customer?
So I'm going to preface this by saying, at the end of the day, I don't really like people that much. So if you keep talking to me after you've already answered my question, like if I ask you a question, answer the question and stop talking. Like, don't keep chatting with me. Just let me go about my day.
Outstanding.
There it is.
That's going on the wall.
So when I meet Rob in person, I hope to one day do that. I was just going to remember, I'm going to talk to him and I'm going to walk away really quickly, because if I keep talking to him, he's going, I don't like you. I'm like, shit. Yep. All right. That's awesome. All right. Last question. Give us a DIY nightmare story. Being in construction, I love it. I want to hear about this. We love fire, dismemberment, maybe floods, maybe locusts,
emergency
plagues.
Services had to be called.
Okay. Well, I was going to go with the story of why you should not learn how to do your own plumbing at 9 p.m. the night before you and your wife leave on a trip somewhere.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Oh, do tell.
So I tried to change
the
shower head. First time we were going to New Orleans the next day or something, 10 a.m. flight out the next day, and she's like, why do you put the shower head in? I'm like, well, I've seen Bob Vila do it. It doesn't seem like that hard to pull the old one off and like cut the tubing and put the new.
This old house did it.
And I didn't understand about like you got to put the fireproof like cloth behind the other side so that you don't burn the drywall as you're like, you've cut the hole open and now you've got the cloth. So I ended up charring a fair bit of drywall, and I got so afraid that I was going to burn the house down that I didn't actually get the solder all the way around the back end of the joint. So when I turned the water back on, I ended up having, not only charred drywall, but a flood at the same time, which was fantastic. So we had to shut the water down to the entire house for like the week we were in New Orleans before I could come back and hire somebody competent to fix it.
Oh my God. All right. I'm going to give you 2 things on that one. One, I have in my own house, I have the thing called the Moen flow valve. So I can turn my phone off. I can turn the water off to my house from my phone. And that has saved me for that same exact trip. We had my cartridge went in my tub the night before we were going to fly out as a family for a week. And I went, you know what? I can fix it. Sure. I mean, I could go to Home Depot at 9:30 at night. Sure. Or I could just turn the water off and go, hey, everybody, we're going to shower when we get there.
Exactly.
So
there's nothing more depressing than like the second trip to Home Depot at 9:00 at night. Like you've already been once and you screwed it up somehow and you got to go back again at 9:00.
That's why I tell people in my business too. I've got 15 handymen that run around Atlanta, and I said you can either do the 4 trips to Depot yourself, or you can pay us. We'll come there and take it, and we'll have it all taken care of. And guess what? You get your Saturday and your Sunday back, and you don't have to go do all this. You're reminding me of one story too. I had it didn't happen to us, thank God, but they had to flash. I don't know if you guys know much about flashing, but somebody, not me, had to face flash some brick, and he did it, and you do it with a big propane heater, and you fire it up and you get the tar all thing, and he didn't know that the brick behind it had not been insulated, and he hit the drywall and the whole house went on fire, dude. Oh yeah, it was brutal. I mean, and he didn't know it until it was, again, especially in a roof in Atlanta. at like 98 degrees, and it was outside in the middle of July. So the whole house went up like tinder.
Oh God.
Oh, it was brutal. Yeah. So there's another thing you don't want to do on your own. But even if Bob Vila can do it, sometimes you just might not be able to. All right, let's go. But Rob can do a lot of stuff, my friends. He can interrogate you, he can waterboard you. He can also help you sell your own business and also help you and guide you to where you want to be when you get going up that mountaintop of success. Get out of here, make that big exit, and go have that big daddy. Let's go wine drinking party. You know what I'm saying? Let's go do that. All right, we're out of here. We gotta go. Bye.
Cheers.